We live in a world where the very thing we crave most, love, often slips through our fingers the tighter we try to hold it. Isn't it strange? The fundamental human desire is simple: to love and to be loved. And yet, the harder we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. Like trying to capture sunlight in the palm of your hand, the warmth disappears the moment you close your fist. Picture a meadow in spring. The flowers do not beg the bees to come. They bloom naturally, without effort, and by their fragrance and presence alone, pollinators arrive. But humans, unlike flowers, often believe we must manage, manipulate, and prove ourselves worthy of love. And in that struggle, in that desperate performance, love begins to wither. What could be more paradoxical than this? The moment we demand love, it hides. The moment we relax into being, it flows toward us. Think of it another way. A river moves freely because it does not resist its banks. If it tried to control its own flow, it would only dam itself. Love works like that river. The more we try to control how others see us, the more we force our relationships, the less space there is for love to breathe. The paradox is clear. Only by letting go of control do we finally find what we were searching for all along. But here's the haunting question. If love is the most natural thing in the world, why do so many of us feel starved of it? Why do people lie awake at night scrolling through glowing screens, yearning for connection while feeling lonelier than ever? Why do relationships that start in fiery passion often end in bitterness, resentment, or silence? What happens when the very thing we desire becomes the source of our suffering? Alan Watts once observed that to love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. Yet most of us begin from fear that if we do not chase, we will not be chosen, that if we do not perform, we will not be loved. And so love becomes a bargain, a transaction, a mask we wear to gain approval. But the irony, the paradox, the cruel joke of it all is that real love begins only when we stop pretending. So the question stands before us, glowing like a lantern in the dark. What happens when we no longer grasp for love, but instead allow it to find us? There was once a young man named Daniel who lived in a quiet American suburb. He had everything in place: a decent job, a comfortable home, and a heart that longed, perhaps too much, for love. Every time he went on a date, he rehearsed his words in front of the mirror, trying to appear charming, witty, and flawless. He spent hours choosing the right shirt, the perfect cologne, and the clever jokes he thought would win someone's affection. At first, things would go well. The women he met laughed at his jokes, complimented his ambition, and seemed interested. But soon, almost predictably, the spark faded. The women would say, "You're nice, but something feels off." Daniel would drive home frustrated, convinced he needed to try harder, to be smoother, more confident, more perfect. One evening, after yet another disappointing date, Daniel stopped by a local diner. He slumped into a booth, exhausted from the endless cycle of trying. The waitress who served him was nothing like the women he had tried so hard to impress. Her hair was messy from a long shift, her uniform a little wrinkled, but she spoke to him with a natural ease, laughing openly at her own clumsiness when she spilled coffee on the counter. Daniel found himself laughing too, not to impress, but simply because the moment was real. That night, he realized something striking. He felt more connection in 10 minutes of honest, unpolished conversation than in months of carefully planned dates. It wasn't the cologne, the practiced lines, or the flawless presentation that created love. It was the simple act of being human together. Like many of us, Daniel had been chasing love as if it were a trophy to be earned, a performance to perfect. But in doing so, he had strangled the very thing he wanted. Love, he discovered, is not something you capture, it's something you allow. Most of us can see ourselves in Daniel. We've sent the carefully worded text, rehearsed the conversation, or tried to shape ourselves into what we thought someone else would desire. And yet, those efforts often leave us drained and disconnected. The more we strain to be loved, the further love seems to drift away. Daniel's story is a reminder that love does not bloom under pressure. It blossoms in the soil of authenticity, where there is no need to perform, no need to chase. When we relax, when we allow ourselves to simply be, we create the space for love to arrive, unforced, unbidden, and real. Daniel's realization is not just his story, it is a mirror of life itself. Nature is constantly teaching us that what is genuine does not need to be forced. A tree does not strain to grow its leaves. It simply reaches toward the light, and the leaves appear. The ocean does not persuade the waves to rise. They rise and fall because it is their nature. And yet, as human beings, we often forget this rhythm. We believe love must be pursued, engineered, and managed, as though it were a business contract rather than a living current. The truth is this: love is not an achievement, but a climate. It is not the medal you receive after effort. It is the air you breathe when you allow yourself to live openly. The lesson hidden in Daniel's story is one that applies to all of us. Connection cannot flourish in the soil of pretense. It grows where there is trust, presence, and ease. Alan Watts often compared human life to music. He said we make the mistake of thinking life is a journey with a destination, like marching from beginning to end, when in fact life is more like a song. The point of music is not to arrive at the final note, but to dance, to play, to let the melody unfold. Love, too, is like music. If you try to rush it, control it, or hold the final note, the song dies. But if you allow the melody to flow, it carries you into beauty without effort. Think of how rivers carve valleys, not by force, but by persistence and grace. Or how flowers attract bees not by chasing them, but by being fully themselves. Love asks the same of us. The principle is simple, yet it feels revolutionary in a world that glorifies control. When we stop performing, we become magnetic. When we stop grasping, we become open. So the larger principle is this: love cannot be possessed. It can only be participated in. It is not a commodity to acquire, but a dance to join. The more we try to own it, the faster it dissolves. The more we share in its mystery, the more it grows. And perhaps that is why love feels at once so terrifying and so liberating, because it requires us to surrender control. To step into the unknown, as rivers flow into the sea, trusting that we will be carried. There are two ways most of us approach love. The first is the path of control. It begins innocently enough. We want to be accepted, admired, chosen. So we edit our words, polish our appearance, and shape our behavior to fit the expectations of others. On this path, love becomes a negotiation. We ask ourselves, how do I keep their attention? How do I make them stay? Inevitably, this leads to tension, anxiety, and loneliness, even when we're not physically alone. Like a musician who insists on playing louder than the rest of the orchestra, we drown out the harmony by trying too hard to lead the song. The second path looks entirely different. It is the path of trust. Here, love is not something we manufacture, but something we participate in. We show up as we are, unpolished but present. We do not try to dominate the melody, but instead join the symphony, blending into the rhythm of life. On this path, connection feels effortless. Instead of, how do I make them love me, the question shifts to, how do I share myself honestly? The result is lightness, freedom, and a sense of belonging deeper than approval. Imagine society as two ecosystems. The first, the desert, is barren because every plant competes for water, choking the roots of its neighbors. This is the world of grasping and controlling love, scarcity, rivalry, and exhaustion. The second, the rainforest, thrives because each tree, vine, and flower supports the others in a living web of abundance. This is the world of surrendered love, where growth and connection happen naturally. Which ecosystem would you rather live in? Alan Watts might put it this way: when you try to clutch love, you turn it into a cage. But when you let it move through you, it becomes a breeze, felt, shared, yet never possessed. So here lies the crossroads before every human heart. Path 1: struggle, performance, control, the loneliness of always managing. Path 2: trust, presence, surrender, the joy of true connection. And the choice is not theoretical. It is lived daily in our conversations, our relationships, and our silent longings at night. The paradox, of course, is that only when we release the need to be loved do we discover that love has been waiting for us all along. One line captures it well: the tighter you grip love, the faster it escapes. The more you let it flow, the more it stays. Up to this point, we've spoken of letting go, of trust, of surrender. But there is another layer, one that feels even more unsettling: the mystery of not knowing. Most of us fear uncertainty. We want to know where love will lead, whether someone will stay, whether we will be safe. Yet, paradoxically, it is in the very absence of certainty that love becomes alive. Think of fire. It glows because it dances. If you try to hold the flame still, it dies. Alan Watts often reminded us that some things cannot be seen directly. A knife cannot cut itself. A flame does not light itself. And your eyes cannot turn inward to see themselves. In the same way, love cannot be fully grasped, named, or explained. It must be lived in mystery. Consider a starry night. You look up, marveling at the countless points of light scattered across the dark. You don't need to map every constellation to feel awe. In fact, the more you try to label, the less wonder remains. Love is like the night sky. Its beauty comes from what you cannot measure. Yet we often demand guarantees. Promise me you'll never leave. Tell me this will last forever. These demands feel like safety, but in reality, they suffocate the very thing we long for. Love needs freedom, and freedom includes uncertainty. Without the unknown, there can be no adventure, no discovery, no real intimacy. So the invitation is not to eliminate uncertainty, but to welcome it. To step into the mystery as a child steps into a forest, eyes wide, heart open, curious about what might appear. Imagine living love not as a solved equation, but as a dance whose next step you cannot predict. Isn't that what makes the dance beautiful? The deeper truth is this: what makes love precious is precisely that we cannot control it. Its fragility, its unpredictability, its sheer wildness. These are not weaknesses but the essence of its beauty. Just as the ocean is vast because it cannot be contained, love is real because it cannot be reduced to certainty. And perhaps the bravest words any of us can say in love are not, "I know," but "I don't know." For in that not knowing, we open a space large enough for wonder, vulnerability, and genuine connection to enter. We began with a paradox. The harder we chase love, the more it escapes. Now, after walking through story, principle, and mystery, we can see why. Love was never meant to be a possession, a guarantee, or a performance. It is a living current, something that flows through us when we allow, but vanishes when we clutch. Think back to the meadow in spring. The flowers did not beg for bees. They bloomed, and in blooming, they attracted what was needed. In the same way, our task is not to force love, but to become the kind of presence where love can land, open, authentic, unafraid of imperfection. Alan Watts often said that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived. The same is true of love. When we stop treating it as a puzzle or a contract, we discover it as a gift, fragile, unpredictable, and yet profoundly real. And if we dare to trust this gift, even in its uncertainty, we discover a freedom deeper than any promise. Here lies the beauty. Impermanence is not the enemy of love. It is its companion. Like music, love is precious because it cannot last forever in the same form. Each note, each touch, each shared glance matters precisely because it will pass. To resist this truth is to resist love itself, but to embrace it is to step fully into life. So let us return to the paradox with new eyes. Desire draws us forward, but clinging holds us back. To love is to risk, to surrender, to let go of certainty and step into the dance of the unknown. And in that dance we find not only connection with another, but also a deeper union with life itself. If you remember nothing else, remember this one truth. What is truly yours does not need to be forced. Love will not arrive by demand, but it will arrive when you are present, open, and real. So let desire remain a flame, not a chain. Let love be the melody you dance to, not the trophy you chase. And above all, trust the mystery, for in that mystery lies the most fundamental human desire fulfilled, to love and to be loved.